But even the most hardcore intellectual atheists here on YouTube, who posture as some kind of, extreme secularists who are out to transform society, even they say that the celebration of Christmas is just no problem at all. Why, it's as secular as the American Constitution, or taking your vows on a stack of Bibles when you go to court. It's perfectly secular. There's no problem with that. There's no problem with Santa Claus. Santa Claus isn't in the Bible.
You're a mean one, Mr. Atheist. You really are a heel. You're as cuddly as a cactus. You're as charming as an eel, Mr. Atheist.
These same people, these secularists and atheists, would never make the same excuses for raising their children with the annual celebration of a Muslim holiday. If you actually look at some of the Hindu and Buddhist holidays, what actually happens in them, thinking of a certain Hindu celebration in Nepal that involves slaughtering and sacrificing large numbers of cattle. We still have that going on in some sects of Judaism also. You might be surprised at the durability of animal sacrifice as a concept in the 21st century.
So the Hindu event you're referencing here is the Godless festival, which is a mass slaughter of animals meant to appease, you guessed it, Gaudiya, a goddess of power. Now on the left side of your screen, you'll see a photo of the aftermath of this disgusting festival in 2014. Somewhere in the vicinity of 300,000 animals were beheaded during that particular festival. On the right, you're going to see a nativity scene. Comparing the two seems unfair, to say the least. There's a distinct difference between killing around 250,000 animals to appease a goddess, and celebrating the supposed birth of Jesus with an ill-placed nativity scene, prayers, and some Christmas carols. I'm not sure what Buddhist holidays you're referencing here, but since Buddhism is compatible with atheism, I'm not sure how it's relevant to your overall point. In fact, the main point of your video is that atheists need to replace the rituals, songs, etc., normally associated with Christmas, with something else, and you can do that with Buddhism. I'll link a few sources below, but some Buddhist sites recommend celebrating Christmas by meditating, focusing on charity work, or by helping a suffering animal. Buddhism also has a whole set of holidays, replete with rituals and all that other good stuff that many people are drawn to.
You wouldn't have your children participating in any of these supernatural rituals. Moreover, whereas it is genuinely disputed and contested today whether or not Jesus Christ ever was an historical figure, or if his origins are entirely mythological, whereas it is disputed whether or not Moses ever was an historically real person, or if he's just a mythological figure, there's no debate about Adolf Hitler. And there are certain segments of society who celebrate the birthday of Adolf Hitler. There are still segments of society who celebrate and revere Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, Lenin. Your choice. Why would you want to keep your child separate from all of these holidays, all of these celebrations? Have any of them killed as many people as Christianity?
Let's just say that Jesus did live. Let's say he was a real man who lived, preached, and had a small gathering of followers. I'm not aware of him killing millions of people. In the Bible, he doesn't call for the mass extermination of Jews. He doesn't set up gulags or concentration camps. He didn't starve, torture, or imprison his political adversaries. To compare Jesus to Hitler or Stalin is silly. Now, I have argued that the Christian belief in hell is abhorrent, and most Christians I've talked to say that hell was taught by Jesus. So I'll give you that. If Jesus was a real person, and if he did indeed teach that we deserve to be tortured for eternity, then he was an awful human being. But to say that teaching people that they deserve hell is on the same scale as literally killing millions of people is just ludicrous and, again, not a fair comparison.
And the cold, hard truth of rational, nihilistic atheism is that there are no excuses. The Christmas tree
is beautiful? I mean, it's not nearly as beautiful as my baby puppy Dexter here, but I do like it. You know what you won't find in my house or on my Christmas tree? Anything remotely religious. There are no Jesus ornaments or little wise men figurines. You'll just find pretty lights, a few superhero ornaments, and some colorful bulbs.
Has to be thrown on the dustbin of history, along with circumcision, burning witches, conversion by the sword, so many barbaric, regrettable traditions.
Again, there's a world of difference between burning witches and celebrating Christmas. It's like you just think up the worst possible examples and then put them up with a holiday that is largely benign. If we start stringing up witches on those trees, then I'll gladly take your comparison into consideration.
You're not just competing with the Christmas tree. You're competing with the Sistine Chapel. You're competing with the assembled beauty and sculpture and works of art and architectural accomplishments and traditions and songs and poetry of centuries and millennia. And what are you going to replace it with?
I'm glad you asked. We're replacing it with a secularized version of Christmas. About 8 hours ago, I took this unscientific poll on Twitter where I asked whether it was a good idea for atheists to celebrate Christmas. So far, the overwhelming majority think it's fine. And if you comb through those responses, you'll find atheists who don't think about religion at all, but who celebrate family, food, presents, friends, and a few days off work. This closely mirrors something I read in an article recently. Here's what it said. Quote, "Such friction has long roots in American history," says Boston University religion professor Stephen Prothero. "Christmas may be a religious holiday, but it's also deeply secular, creating a natural conflict. There have always been people in America who want to make it more religious, more Christian," he said. But the reason they're doing that is that Christians have largely lost control of the holiday. His 2003 book, American Jesus, talks about how Jesus has been claimed and remade by other faiths and cultures in the United States. The same has happened with Christmas, he says. It isn't just a Christian holiday anymore. It's a lot of other things, he said. Ironically, he adds, maintaining that balance probably helps keep Christmas front and center. End quote. Some atheists have replaced it with things like Newton Mass. But the bottom line here is that, like the Grinch, Christians stole Christmas, not from the who in Whoville, but from the pagans who celebrated the winter solstice. And since then, it has evolved further. It has been largely secularized, and you can celebrate the holiday without celebrating Christ. To be honest, it's a bit funny to me that Christians will often talk about giving up worldly wealth, but their stolen sacred holiday is now a day built on rampant consumerism.
I don't feel I'm stepping into the shoes of anyone else who's made this effort before. That's the weirdest thing. If you come on the internet and say you want to start a new fad, a new idea, you have a lot of precedents to look around at.
You're a real trailblazer, my friend. The groundwork is already done. Now, feel free to make up your own way of celebrating Yule or whatever you want to call it, but millions of us have already done that and continue to do it on a yearly basis.
You think it's harmless to raise your kid celebrating Christmas? Then why don't you think it's harmless to take them down to the mosque and raise them with Islam? Why don't you think it's harmless to raise them in Hinduism? You think it's harmless because it's familiar. You think it's harmless because the constant barrage of advertising has made this particular religion, its particular superstitions, lies, cultural values, irrational inanities, seem so familiar.
I do sympathize with your point here, and I don't think you're entirely wrong either. You can certainly make a compelling case that Christmas can, and sometimes does, embolden Christians, and make them feel as though we're adding legitimacy to their nonsense beliefs. And you're right that we do celebrate Christmas and not Ramadan because of the culture we were born into. But I also think that when atheists do celebrate Christmas, they're making it their own and actually lessening or removing the Christian elements. Over time, it will likely be a wholly secular holiday to most, except a few fringe Christians who will continue to celebrate it as if it has religious significance. But maybe I'm wrong and you agree with Boz. Either way, I hope you'll leave your thoughts in the comment section. You won't be able to leave your thoughts in his comment section, because he decided to disable comments, which seems like a weird thing for someone who wants to start a movement to do. But hey, who am I to judge? I hope you all have a terrific holiday, and thank you so much for the support you've shown this channel this year. Take care, and cheers.
I've been with you since God knows when. You pick me up at the club and then you take me home, invite me in. The lights go down and we begin.